Now, amid the Alaska meeting, Donald Trump made big remarks on trade. When asked about possible secondary tariffs on India, Trump says that the decision could come in 2 to 3 weeks. However, there is no clarity coming on that way. However, the India question is concerned. Let's put that out to Srinjoy, who's connected with us this morning. Mr. Suresh Kumar Goel, former diplomat, is also with us, and Troy Blackwell, former advisor to the Biden-Harris administration, also connected with us. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking out your time. Srinjoy, when we take a look as far as the India question is concerned, because this has been, when it comes to India being at the receiving end of 50% tariffs that has been slapped by the Trump administration.
President Trump has been the most unpredictable president ever, and it's very difficult to know what he's going to do tomorrow. But regardless of that, it must be said that there is an American delegation that will be here, and that will be an opportunity to discuss this entire issue. Because a lot of times when President Trump says something, it's not the last word. It's often the first salvo in an agreement. Now we have to work out what he actually means, and if he's placed this 50% tariff, whether it's actually because of Russian oil or are there other things concerned. So there are a lot of imponderables here, and India hopes that this gets sorted out. President Trump and his advisors know that India and America have very different economic situations. India's per capita income is $3,000 plus. America's is $50,000, $60,000 plus. There's a big difference there. And 60% of Indians are still involved in agriculture, in dairy farming, and things like that. Now, this is something the Americans have to understand. Or is it that they actually know all this? So all of this has to be worked out. There are 2-3 weeks to go. And it must be said that this 50% tariff is going to be very difficult for India. We'll eventually have to sort this out. We have had difficulties with America in the past. In 1998, when India went nuclear, eventually things got sorted out. Then there was this Devyani Khobragare problem. Again, that got sorted out. So one hopes that this problem does get sorted out.
But Mr. Goel, as far as India-US relations is concerned, it's taken its time to build. And at a time when Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi hold each other in high regards and call each other as friends, however, Prime Minister Modi has made it clear. In fact, he reiterated yesterday from his Independence Day speech as well, saying that when it comes to the national interest of our farmers, there would be no compromise at any cost. Mr. Goel, sir, can you unmute yourself, sir, please?
Yes,
sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah. 2 or 3 things very briefly in the bullet form. I don't think tariffs on India have anything to do with agricultural negotiations, or they have to do anything with the Russian oil, because if that was the factor, there are so many other countries who would have attracted the similar kind of tariffs. It is more in terms of, I think, tariff. Give a tough hand first, be difficult, and hoping that with that kind of difficulty, the other side will cavil or will come down in terms of expectation from him. So I don't think it has anything to do with the tariffs really. Tariffs have entirely different things. I do believe, I will not substantiate here, but my own assessment is that tariffs are being used by Trump in case of India to put geopolitical pressure and not really in terms of economic achievement. Number one. Number two, and therefore, by the same reason, what is happening in Alaska, or what may not happen in Alaska or in Moscow later on, will have nothing to do with the tariffs on India. Pressure, the friendship will build up, etc., but the reasons lie elsewhere. Trump and Modi friendship, yes, Trump and Modi are friends, but So were Trump and Elon Musk. Friendship has no value for Trump as far as his own agenda is concerned. Last point I want to make is we need to be careful in terms of our relationship with USA. It has built up. Trump may be a temporary phenomenon. Somebody else will come. But in the meantime, we have to manage what Trump does. He is the president. And
well,
he can
because
take
India
decisions.
continues to push for the trade deal there, negotiations that have been taking place. Yes, we have seen on the sidelines as far as when it comes to talks are also concerned, they have been taking place. But however, when we speak of the geopolitical situation as well, let's put out what Donald Trump is of the opinion, because there hasn't been really any outcome, especially when it comes to, but many were anticipating that there would be a possible pause or a ceasefire in the ongoing conflict. However, Donald Trump repeatedly spoke in recent days of wanting to have a second meeting after Alaska summit, saying that he could see the possibility of next meeting with Putin happening in Moscow. However, neither of the leaders have announced a second meeting and where it would be held. But this is coming across as a significant development where Russian President Putin publicly reaffirmed Donald Trump's long-standing claim regarding the Ukraine conflict. Putin said that the war in Ukraine would not have started if Trump would have been in office in 2022. And Putin also pointed out to what he called as a missed opportunity for diplomacy, adding that he warned the then Biden administration about the risk of escalation well before the invasion. Let's play that out.
I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, businesslike and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine.
Troy, what's your reading into this? Because here is the opinion that has been made. If the then Biden administration was previously warned of the growing hostilities between Russia and Ukraine, the war would have not happened if Trump was in power.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I fully disagree with that opinion. The constructive conversations with Putin have been going on for years. President Obama and Secretary Clinton had conversations with Putin. President Biden and Secretary Blinken had conversations with Putin. But what we must realize is that Putin is an adversary, especially to the Western world, and he's an agitator. So even though conversations were had, Putin still invaded Ukraine unprovoked. And so he would have done that regardless who was president. And I think today's meeting showed that. So yes, Donald Trump showed up to the meeting, and Donald Trump did not necessarily walk away losing anything. But as an American, we didn't necessarily leave the conversation winning anything either. Putin showed up to the meeting. Putin walked away without Russia receiving any new sanctions. He did not have to make any compromise on Ukraine, so that war is still continuing. And, President Trump is supposed to be the king of the deal, but, America, we didn't get any deal. And so I think, many of us are looking at this situation with more questions than answers now that the meeting is over. So I fully disagree that, if Trump had been president, that this war would not have started. And again, today's meeting shows that very clearly, because if that was the case, President Trump would have been able to make some sort of compromise with Putin today in regards to the invasion of Ukraine, and Putin walked away with a free hand.
Well, as far as, today's meetings is concerned, because they have been saying that there has been some progress, but however, the outcome that everyone was expecting, a possible ceasefire, that hasn't happened. And that is the reason why, Shinjoy, it seems that both sides are refusing to budge. And high-level talks that have happened in Alaska, where, President Putin has reaffirmed Donald Trump's long-standing, claim over the Ukraine conflict. Because had Trump been in power, would the conflict would have taken place in the first place, as he's been claiming?
Well, he said two things. He said, if I were president, this would not have happened. Now, there's no way of knowing that. But there's one other thing we do know. He said that I will end the conflict in one day. Now we are getting close to 7 months of Trump in power. That's 200 days. The war is still going on. He has spoken with Putin. He has now met Putin. And there is no sign of a ceasefire. The issue is not that easy. Very simply put, the Russians are holding on to Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk, large parts of the last two. And the Ukraine says that these were taken away from them, the Crimea in 2014 and the other areas in the last 3 years. Now both sides want those areas. Both sides want that land. Now, the Russians, are they going to give it up? Probably not. Are the Ukrainians going to stop claiming them and say, okay, you've taken what you've taken and let's make peace? Probably not. So under those circumstances, what will lead to peace? We don't know. And we don't know what President Trump wants. That's the most important thing. Or what he will want tomorrow or the day after, because he's not the most predictable of presidents. Now, at this point, probably 1 million people have been dead or wounded in this fighting, if you include Russians and Ukrainians and civilians. Now, that's a lot of people. If the president believes that he can end the war, at least a ceasefire would make sense. This is what India has said. President Putin was told by Prime Minister Modi publicly that the 21st century is not a time for war. But the whole point is, this is a war that has been going on for 3 years plus. It has affected both countries. It has affected the West in many ways.
Yes.
And it has affected the South. Food prices are up, fuel prices are up, and we add the 50% tariff as well.
Yes.
And then you have
But when it comes to the bearing that is now, being faced by the world, because here is President Trump saying that there is no deal until we have a deal. And he says that he will be speaking to President Zelensky as well and tell him about the meeting. And it is then ultimately up to them. So rather, he seems to be now putting the ball in the court of Zelensky now to decide where exactly will this war head. But let's put out another breaking update, what we are learning, especially when it comes